Lost Mothman Film and The Dark Secret of Point Pleasant. This is going to be quite a wild ride. I won't take too long. And after this at 7 p.m. we'll have the first ever public showing of this little documentary I've made, Mothman, the film that never was, about, believe it or not, the Lost Mothman Film. And The Dark Secret of Point Pleasant too, as you can probably imagine. But that'll be at 7. So text your friends, message your family, let them know that it's 7. All will be revealed. Well, I'll give you a hint about what's going to be revealed now. So, first off, oh, and by the way, that tape was found in one of my participants' attic, and you'll see what's on the tape when you see the film. So, Point Pleasant in the 1990s, to begin, was very, very different from how it is now. There was no Mothman Festival, there was no Mothman Museum. I mean, there was the Harris Steakhouse, which some of you might remember, and was a very popular venue for food and drink. And the late Carolyn Harris owned it. She helped set up the Mothman Festival with our own Jeff Wamsley, who's still around, obviously. But other than that, like, you know, we got the Low Hotel back then too. But it was not the town that it is today. It did not have all the things that we know and love about Point Pleasant, maybe from a more globally famous point of view. People still like living in Point Pleasant, a lot of people. But it just wasn't the way today. It was economically nowhere near where it's come now since around the time of the Richard Gere movie, Mothman Prophecies. So, times were tough. And some people, when times are tough economically or in other ways, maybe go to certain other ways of making money, which we'll talk about later. But that was Point Pleasant, broadly speaking, in the 1990s. And there were also many, many, many nice things about it back then too. You still had some businesses, you know, record stores, that kind of thing, that we'd associate with the 1990s. But in 1997, new faces came into town for 2 weeks, and they were from a video game company, of all things, called The Neverhood. And Doug Tannam-Elgie was the man spearheading this effort, and the effort I'm talking about, of course, was that they wanted to make a movie about the Mothman legend. And so Doug and his crew came into town in 1997. Any of you who were there in those days, Michael Meredith. And they got the people together, they shot, or, you know, filmed locals as extras, that kind of thing. Before that, who were the Neverhood? The Neverhood were, you know, Earthworm Jim, some of you might remember, very famous video game and cartoon. Doug Tannam-Elgie invented that, you know, with people such as Ed Schofield and Mike Dietz. Very famous video game, later turned into a Saturday morning cartoon. That's a picture of them there, working on one of their many creative projects back in the late 90s, mid-90s. The Neverhood, of course, being the name of their company, but also the name of their most popular, arguably, video game, which was entirely made of clay. Stop-motion animation. Very creative. So really, really clever and creative bunch of people. They came to Point Pleasant to make a film about Mothman. Well, how did it go? Until now, we don't know, because the film was never released. No one knows, until now, what happened to this Mothman film that the Neverhood company came to Point Pleasant to film it. I should mention as well that this wasn't a group of, dare I say, a bit like myself, amateur filmmakers. This was a group of people who were connected to the likes of Steven Spielberg, DreamWorks. Steven Spielberg and the DreamWorks Interactive funded the Neverhood video game. They were funding 2 more video games they were making. And so, according to newspaper reports from the time, Spielberg said he'd have a look at the film when they were done. Spielberg's colleague, Mark Russell, was a producer on the film. You'll see him in the documentary. And other people such as, I cannot remember the name because he's passed away and I never got to talk to him sadly. But he was about why it hasn't been released. What happened? We don't know, or until now we don't know, you'll see in the documentary, but there were hints about what may or may not have happened from reading about it online. On websites like IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, in the trivia section, all you could read was, as you can see, post-production never done, dubbed in April, the director refused to talk about the film ever since. Aside from a sneak preview at the Comic-Con in the 90s, the film never was shown officially to the public. If you were lucky enough to attend that Comic-Con, that was the only way you'd see it. No copy was made public whatsoever, even up to the year 2020, when I started making this documentary about the film. What was known was that Doug TenNapel and his crew were scared, and it wasn't clear why, but something bad happened when they were in Point Pleasant in 1997 that they weren't eager to talk about. Something, you know, if it was a big man with wings and glowing red eyes, chances are, you know, they might have said more because we know about the Mothman legend. So I was thinking, well, I mean, if it's scarier than even the Mothman legend, what could it be? And you'll see in the documentary. But he said, you know, we ran home scared 2019 in a YouTube live stream that I found. I reached out to the crew, interviewed them, put the documentary together, yada yada, and you'll see that at 7 p.m. But that was how it all started in terms of scratching my brain, thinking, well, what's going on here? I mean, well, what could have happened? What's scarier than the Mothman? Well, I gradually began to put two and two together with some help from the locals of this town. Very good people, such as I mentioned, Jeff Wamsley, who owns the Mothman Museum and the Mothman, helped set up the Mothman Festival. Denny Bellamy, head of Mason County Tourism. People such as that. A lot of locals who you'll see in the documentary. But it was clear that something very weird was going on in the Point Pleasant area in the 1990s. And I don't think it had anything to do with Mothman. It had nothing to do with Mothman. And long story short, before you see what happened, there were just inklings that certain people ended up in not very good situations, some of whom had absolutely nothing to do with Point Pleasant, West Virginia at the time. For example, as you'll see here, a man from Mansfield, Ohio went missing in the early 90s, but he went missing in the TNT area, or more specifically, his car was found in the TNT area. And it says there, as it says in the article, in the Point Pleasant Register that you can find online, the police found no connection between this man and Point Pleasant, so why did he end up in the TNT area? Why is his car there? He can't be found. Well, that's a bit odd. Who knows? Maybe just found a nice spot, I don't know. But then there's, what's this? A man from Wheeling, West Virginia, shot to death just across the river from Point Pleasant. The man was, it was ruled that he was acting in self-defense. It was a robbery incident, and I don't believe anyone was charged. What's a man from Wheeling, West Virginia, driving down in the late 80s to Point Pleasant and then across the river to Meigs County, Ohio, I believe? What happened there? Why did he go all the way there just to rob someone? You shouldn't be doing that anyway, but I mean, why travel all that distance? It didn't make sense, arguably. Why did this poor man end up dead in a wooded area near his home in the late 1970s in Point Pleasant? And when you go looking for information in the newspapers, no one was charged, to the best of my knowledge. If there was, I'm not aware of it. Mason man is found dead of gunshot wounds. That's shocking. Well, you know, these things happen, sadly, in some, everywhere, now and then. But putting two and two together, things just seemed a little off. The number of these people had nothing to do, ostensibly, with the Point Pleasant area. So what if I told you that the man from Wheeling hung around a lot in Point Pleasant in those days? Well, I says, why was he hanging around in Point Pleasant a lot in those days? I was told, well, because he was associated with a thing called the Wheeling Mob. And you'll hear about that later. But first of all, yes, here we go. More specifically, I thought the next slide was next, but this is going to get into it. Good. The Point Pleasant, Point Pleasant and the Mafia. Point Pleasant and the Mafia. First of all, in the center there you see Wheeling, West Virginia. This slide was prepared only a few minutes ago, so apologies, I might be a bit over the place explaining this. But the Wheeling mob were essentially the big cheese in the West Virginia panhandle, and their influence spread to different areas. some of you into history or who were around back then will remember hearing about the Wheeling Mob. They were not something to be taken lightly. They were very dangerous. They were a very intimate arm of the Pittsburgh mob, obviously in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The Wheeling Mob's main guy, Paul Hankish, was in charge of the illegal gambling operations on behalf of the Pittsburgh Mafia. The Pittsburgh Mafia, of course, is one of the most famous organized crime groups, families, whatever you want to call it, in the United States of America. Not as big as they were back then, certainly, but, you know, they were very closely connected to possibly even more dangerous organized crime families like the Genovese family, like the Gambino family, in places like New York, New Jersey, all these other states. You know, the sort of people who Giuliani was going after in the 80s when he was mayor, the sort of people who inspired all these gangster films, you know, you name it, from, I don't know, maybe The Sopranos, The Godfather, all these sorts of things. So where does Point Pleasant come into play? Well, you'll see in the documentary, I don't want to give too much away, but at 7 p.m. you'll see where Point Pleasant comes into play in all this. To give you a taste, the Wheeling Mob's main man, the Pittsburgh Mob's main man in West Virginia, Paul Hankish, as you will see in that article there, and it's very small, you'll see it bigger in the documentary, so you'll get to see for yourself, was often in Point Pleasant. Why was he in Point Pleasant? You'll see. In that particular article, it talks about a firebombing at an establishment in Mason County, where we are right now, right outside the main town, Point Pleasant. Firebombing that Hankish was involved in. And then, of course, we have the Pennsylvania Crime Commission report from 1990 on the left. A bit of a profile on Paul No Legs Hankish. No Legs was his nickname because, as some of you may be aware, he lost his legs when his car was bombed in 1960-something. And that made him a legend among organized crime people throughout the valley and beyond. Because it did go beyond. Paul Hankish was a close associate with the likes of the Gambino family and Genovese family. He was the Pittsburgh Mafia's guy in West Virginia. And unfortunately, you know, some of this spread down to Point Pleasant, West Virginia, up until at least the end of the 1990s, as we will see in this documentary, Mothman, the film that never was. And now, how do we know about this going on so long? Well, because, you know, this year, 2024, my documentary coming out, which you'll see at 7 p.m., it's being shown here, all will be revealed about what exactly the Wheeling Mob and the Pittsburgh Mafia's arm, by extension, were doing in Point Pleasant in the 1990s and the 80s, and believe it or not, the 70s. What were they doing here? How are they working here? Where was their money being generated? That sort of thing. You'll see it, and we have this behind-the-scenes footage that will be shown for the first time publicly, that one of the actors found in his attic, and he very kindly gave me permission to use in this film. And as Denny Bellamy, the head of Mason County Tourism, pointed out, this film has captured a moment in time in Point Pleasant's recent history, and as well as it being quite dark, as well as being very creepy, as well as it really shocking you about what was going on in the town back then, it also really highlights the developments that have been made since then, and how economically the town has just developed so much, and how, you know, as back then, the huge numbers of good people in Point Pleasant have finally had their time to roost, as it were, economically, for things like the Mothman Festival, which you're all here for, many of you, Mothman Museum, all the great things being done. You'll see that at the time, that wasn't always the case. And I think this film really highlights the developments that have been made since then. And unfortunately, though, to do that, you will have to see the dark things that some select few people were involved in Point Pleasant up until the turn of this century. As Jay Holden, the cinematographer of the Lost Mothman film, pointed out, there was this dark underneath behind what was happening in the town when he visited it. As Chris Rausch, the key grip, described, revisiting this story, it's scary for a lot of the people who experienced it, who came to this town. Not hopefully the experience, obviously, of course not, the the experience that you guys have had. The scariest thing you'll find is the Mothman legend, which is scary enough. But there's more than that in Point Pleasant's history. Not anymore. Not anymore. But in their history, there were certain things going on that, you know, as with many places, certain people wanted to make a living, and sometimes some people would take advantage of that. So all will be revealed in Mothman, the film that never was. I hope you enjoy it, and text your friends, message your family, whoever else in between, and let them know that at 7 p.m. you will see for the first time behind-the-scenes footage from this lost horror movie showing Point Pleasant in 1997. See what it looked like back then. See the crew's experiences firsthand as they encountered these dangerous individuals among the many, many lovely, nice, helpful people in Point Pleasant who were very helpful to them back then, as with today. You will see the crew's reactions when they ran into the small number of people who weren't so helpful, who weren't so hospitable, and who were perhaps a bit dangerous and connected to certain things that they shouldn't have been connected to. You'll see all that for yourself. You'll hear it from the cast and crew's own words about what happened in Point Pleasant, and then you will hear from the locals, including Debbie Bellamy, including the head of the Mothman Museum, Jeff Wamsley, including other locals like the late Larry Bragg, an artist whose paintings, I believe, are hung up in the Low Hotel, if any of you had the good fortune of staying there before it closed. You'll see all these locals talking about their memories of the Pittsburgh Mafia's influence in Point Pleasant back then. I hope you stay for the movie. Let your family and friends know. It's going to be a wild ride. It'll be a bit scary. But, you know, I hope it'll be enlightening as to how far the town has come since then. And it's a new chapter in uncovering Point Pleasant's history. It's a new perspective of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. And very honoured that you're all here. I really hope you enjoyed, so thanks very much. And that is probably about it for now, until 7 p.m. Thank you. It looks like we actually have some questions. Cool. Feel free to raise your hand up. But first, we have... What drew me to it? Well, I love filmmaking, as many people do, and I heard there was a lost horror movie. I like horror. You know, Blair Witch Project was, you know, I love that movie. Grew up with it, still like it. And I thought, well, what happened to this lost horror movie, you know? And that got me into the neighborhood and all the great stuff they were doing. And so I thought, well, let's look into this. At the time, I was working for a student newspaper where I'm from in Dublin, Ireland. I should probably have mentioned, in case you can't tell from my accent, I'm from very far away from here. Before 2023, I had never set foot in the United States of America. And I've had wonderful experiences here as a visitor, as an outsider, both here in Point Pleasant and also elsewhere in the USA. And that's what got me into it, basically. What happened to this piece of lost media? Lost media is a thing that some of us can relate to. What exactly happened to this lost film, this lost comic book, or this lost television series? Was there anything going on behind that made it lost? That sort of thing. That's probably most of all what got me into it. Then when I found out what was apparently happening, that obviously was like, okay, this is worth going through with and seeing it to the end. So that's the story there. Any other questions? Or do you want to see it for yourself? Yes?
I just want to know how you got from Dublin to West Virginia.
A plane.
Good way, that's one way.
Why you come here?
How did you hear about Mothman?
Yeah, good question. Oh goodness, I mean, I can't tell you how young I was. I'm at the ripe old age now of 26. And when I was, very old, I see. And when I was probably 12, something like that, I guess, as many people probably found out about the Mothman legend themselves. Just thought it was very interesting. I like creepy things. You know, not too much now, but you know, it's that sort of thing. So as many people did, I read a little bit about it, watched the Mothman Prophecies movie with Richard Gere, directed by Mark Lopez, and that's how I found out about the Mothman. I should mention though, given we're talking now about the Richard Gere movie, On Monday, I will be doing a live interview with the screenwriter of that Richard Gere Mothman Prophecies movie on a podcast called Astonishing Legends, and we'll be talking a bit with the hosts and the screenwriter about this lost Mothman film and Point Pleasant's interesting history and its dark secret, which is being revealed now at last, with the help of the locals. And so yeah, that's a tangent, I know, but that's how I found out about Mothman. As many of you all probably found out about Mothman, liking the story and reading about it on the internet and in books. So thank you. Yes, sir. The podcast. So it's Astonishing Legends, and I believe this interview is going up on their Patreon, and it's then going to be made public afterwards. Sometime afterwards, maybe a couple of months, you'd have to ask them. It's Astonishing Legends. They're having me on with Richard Hayton, the screenwriter of The Mothman Prophecies with Richard Gere, which is a controversial film. If you talk to some of the locals, you know, some liked it, some didn't. I can understand that. I personally quite liked the movie. I did like it. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was very creepy. But yeah, that's Richard Hayton, great guy. I love his work, and I'm looking forward to talking with him on Scott and Forrest's show, the hosts of Astonishing Legends. Other media, oh yes sir, yes, hello.
I understood you to say earlier that Tannam-Elgie has, since the film, since the disappearance of the film, has refused to talk about it?
Until now. In this documentary, I somehow managed to persuade Tannam-Elgie to do an interview on the record about what happened when him and his crew were in your state, West Virginia. By the way, this is Michael Meredith, a very good actor who was in the Lost Mothman film. And I didn't know you were showing up today, Michael, so thank you so much. It's so good to see you again. I didn't know what happened to you.
I didn't call and tell you.
Yeah. I was worried what happened to you. I couldn't get in touch with you. I was like, what's going on? So it's good to see you're well, and thank you for being here. And he's a wonderful actor. Tannam-Elgie hired him to be in the movie, and you played who did you play, Michael? Let people know. Who did you play?
You know, about the only pictures I have seen that came from filming
Yes.
here
Yes.
is myself sitting in front of freezing to death, by the way, sitting in front of a dumpster.
That's right.
I played a drunken bum.
Drunken bum. Okay, that's.
In front of a dumpster.
Yep.
And who received a visit one night from Mothman, who brought him donuts.
Exactly. Michael brought
You've
them
never been
on.
brought donuts by Mothman?
Yeah, there you go. Michael you were given donuts by the Mothman.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I claimed.
Yeah. I mean, it's something else. And you see Michael's excellent acting ability in the documentary, in the footage we have of him. But yeah, any other memories you want to share though, about the filming?
I think the character's name was Chicken Bone, by the way.
Yeah, I think so. You're right. And what's interesting is Michael has the same hairstyle that he had back then, not the film, but as he had in real life back then. And it's amazing seeing that continuity. That just struck me now. Congratulations. And it's good to see you. And beside Michael is A.J. Milam. Am I pronouncing that correct? Milam. And I believe Milam is from Point Pleasant. Is that correct?
No, I'm from Raleigh County.
Okay. And you were in the film too?
Yes.
Who did you play?
I played a hunter coming out of the woods.
In the TNT area?
Yes.
Well, that's interesting, because in the documentary you're going to hear about some of the odd things that were happening in the TNT area back then. I'm not talking about men with wings and red eyes jumping out and scaring people. I'm talking about some rather dark activities that may or may not have been happening. That's been one of the harder things to pin down in researching this documentary about what may have been occurring in the TNT area. Did you see anything strange when you were in the TNT area filming that Mothman film?
No, I saw the Mothman doll they had made, the rubber doll. No, I didn't see anything real.
The big Mothman doll? Yeah. You're going to see that in the documentary too. A foam, latex, leather, no, something nice. Mothman with red eyes that would fly and it was on the wings and everything. And how did you find that experience overall being in the movie?
I thought it was pretty interesting. interesting. I didn't audition for the movie. My friend here had a part. He said, yeah, I ought to give this guy a call. So I called him, and he said, I've got to have your voice in my movie. Like I had an accent. Y'all think I got an accent?
No.
So he wrote me a little piece of a hunter coming out of the woods with a little dialogue. It went well. I enjoyed it.
Yeah. By all accounts, the crew Doug Tannam-Elgie came with, from most of them from the neighborhood, some of them not, like Mark Russell and Marty Cohen, etc., were not in the neighborhood, but they knew them very well. They were very, very accommodating of West Virginia locals' schedules and all that kind of thing, and by all accounts, as you've heard from AJ there, very kind to the actors from the state and the town itself, which was very nice to hear about. Would you ever act in a movie again? Have you acted since then? Would you ever act in a movie again if you were given the opportunity? What is it?
Oh yeah, I've done quite a bit. Just this past March, we did a film in Harper's Ferry about a snarly yak. It's a giant dog figure that's supposedly been seen since the 1700s. And I've done a lot of reenactment stuff.
Harper's Ferry. That's
Northern West Virginia.
yeah, that's a pretty little town, quite like this actually. Yeah, so that's interesting. So, and Michael, you've acted in other films as well since then, haven't you? Yeah. What examples can you give us?
Big pardon?
What examples of other films you've been in would you like to share with us?
I was in Silence of the Lambs.
Yes, good.
Did a made-for-TV piece with George C. Scott, maybe 2 years before his death.
Right.
And that was a huge thrill to me.
Yeah.
I love George C. Scott.
Yeah.
I have a good deal of credit.
Wow.
Feature films and shorts.
Yeah. Both very good actors, as we can see, and you'll hear about them in the documentary and the great work they did. So a belated thank you to the work you did in 1997 on this little film. And all will be revealed. All will be revealed. So thank you. And any other questions before we finish up?
One question. How long is the film?
The film is just 1 hour and 10 minutes. 1 hour and 10 minutes at 7 p.m. And as a matter of fact, guys, AJ and Michael, as West Virginia locals, is there anything that you can tell us about organized crime in the Ohio Valley kind of region back in the day? Anything you might be able to share, or perhaps you want to play it safe and just let people see it for themselves in the documentary?
Stay away from as far away from all that as I can.
That's probably a good idea. What about yourself, Mike?
I really knew nothing. I had such a wonderful childhood, and young adulthood in the state of West Virginia, small town, West Virginia. Crime never entered my mind, never entered my community, so far as I was concerned. I dealt.
Yeah. That's for the best then. I'm glad to hear that. And let's see. Any other questions before we finish up? No? Perfect. Well, I hope you enjoyed the film. Certainly there's some quite shocking revelations. I never would have imagined, really, but it certainly was something else looking into this. And I'm glad to say, I won't say whom, but I was talking to a very prominent local just before coming here who is thinking about maybe doing a project themselves also about this information being unearthed. So I'm very excited to hear that, and really glad that the locals are so pleased with this movie as well, those who've seen it so far. So that really has been a thrill. And any questions about the mafia in West Virginia generally that anyone might have? I'm not going to proclaim to be an expert, but I'll add my own 2 cents if you want.
When I checked several years ago, all I had to say was it was lost footage. That's the reason that the film was never made.
The film lost footage, yeah. And you want to know how it fitted into why it was lost?
Yeah.
You'll see in the documentary. You'll see in the documentary.
I think I speculated to you sometime back when you and I talked that very possibly the makers of Mothman Prophecies had purchased the raw stock from Duncan Maple and put it in a dumpster somewhere. Because they didn't want to compete.
I cannot confirm nor deny that. I have no idea. Where did you hear about it?
We just came up with it.
I might have just come up with it. Really, I can't tell you. I don't know. But it seemed to me to make sense.
The film business it's a weird business, and all sorts of weird things happen in the entertainment world and the world of creative arts. Certainly on my blog and podcast, Commendable Commotion, you'll see about the strange things that emerge in the world of entertainment and the strange intersection between the arts and crime and parapolitics, who the likes of Stephen Snyder are great experts on. His podcast, The Farm, I was a guest on, and I talked a bit about this topic, the mafia in West Virginia. He, of course, lives in West Virginia, so it's interesting getting perspectives like that. Other locals as well were very helpful, like Mark Lopez, brilliant help, really helpful with the transport side of things, logistics, the recollections of living in Point Pleasant back in the day, in the year 2000, just as this activity was beginning to, I think, wrap up. And yes, so really great help from the locals. So yes, that's probably about it for now, until 7 p.m. And then you'll see where these connections came into play in Point Pleasant in 1997. So thank you, and hope you'll all be here. Tell your friends and family, and they're gonna have a wild evening thinking over what they've just seen and what they've just heard. Oh, and I should mention as well, there's some video evidence in the documentary too. Nothing sleazy, but you know, there's some. We got some video evidence, and I'm looking forward to showing you that as well. I really am. And you know, so it backs up what the locals and the actors and the crew were saying. And so I hope you enjoy seeing that, if that's the right word. What else have we got? Well, we got good music as well, but I'll tell you about that in a minute. Yes, sir.
Would you happen to know if there's a restroom in this building, sir?
I can neither confirm nor deny that. Let's see. Maybe ask one of these good fellows in green, they can tell you. So, any less controversial questions? Yes? That's a wonderful question, and I'm going to have to say, wait and see.
We couldn't hear the question.
I say that about anywhere, because why I say that isn't because I know something that you don't and want to be all teasing it. I'm saying it because, like anywhere, by all accounts, no. By all accounts, no, but you can think, can't you? You can think. Sure, as with anywhere, but to the best of my knowledge, no. To the best of my knowledge, no. To the best of my knowledge, the town has changed so much since then, and wait and see, live your lives, and see how wonderful the town has become since the 90s, and then come to your own conclusion at the end of the day. And certainly, what seems to have been indicated to me is that no, it's a completely different place. In West Virginia? Yes, but I don't know about Point Pleasant, but in West Virginia, in the state of West Virginia, yes, there has. In 1990. So you can read about that online. There's a very good series called The Wheeling Mob by a journalist named Steve Novotny, and you'll see him in the documentary. And that kind of details the roundup that happened. Unfortunately, though, as you'll see in this documentary, almost a decade after that, there were certain people who had not been caught and who still had their hands in certain activities, presumably still linked to the Wheeling Mob and by extension the Pittsburgh Mafia and the Gambinos and all these lovely fellows. So in terms of a roundup, yes, in 1990. In Point Pleasant, no. In Point Pleasant, no. But in wider West Virginia, yes. Yes. Any other questions at all about this strange subject matter?
Given the nature of the content that you're about to reveal, do you feel it wise to say maybe make an announcement that you're of sound mind and have no suicidal tendencies whatsoever?
I think these days I'm of sound mind, so I can tell you that much. What was the other thing you want me to confirm for
You have no suicidal tendencies.
That's a very personal
You might want
question.
to speak up.
I mean, putting someone on the spot. I mean, to be fair, doing this process of making the documentary has involved putting people on the spot like that and asking them certain things that may not be particularly pleasant things to revisit. So it's been an interesting process, and I think there's a certain method of doing it, as you demonstrated just there very well. And then eventually you can get the information out and find the truth. So, does that answer your question? Sort of, okay.
That was for you.
Yeah, well, don't worry, everyone. The town is very, very different from how it was back then. It's just not how it was back then whatsoever. And I've been so grateful for the help of the town in describing to me and remembering how far the town has come since then. There's no danger of anything happening to me if that's what you're trying to get at. No. Oh, someone else has a question? I hear someone. No? Okay. Yeah. So, are you from West Virginia yourself?
Indeed, yes.
Cool. Whereabouts?
Right here, just outside of town.
Awesome. Do you remember anything about this?
No, I'm new to the area. I've only been here a decade.
Oh, okay. Yeah, cool. Anyone here from Point Pleasant?
Oh, well, one.
Either, sir. You're from Point Pleasant. Cool. Is your last name Dedrick by any chance?
Could you say again?
Is your last name Dedrick?
No.
Oh, sorry. I know someone who looks a bit like you and his last name's Dedrick, so I thought you might have been him. Sorry. What's your name, sir?
I'm about psycho.
I see. And you're from Point Pleasant? Cool. And do you remember anything about this?
At that time, I would have been 18. And,
Okay.
yeah, I had to think of it.
Cool. So, I didn't hear much. I heard that you were 18. So yeah, no, when I was 18, I wouldn't have known much about this necessarily. So, anyone else from Point Pleasant? Hi. Yeah. Cool. What's your name, sir? Do you remember anything about this? Okay, good. So you'll see in the film then where it all came into play. So, I don't want to overstay my welcome. At 7 p.m. you'll see the results of 3 years of working on this. Started in the pandemic. A good way of spending the time, as well as doing a master's degree in drama and performance studies, which was interesting doing it over Zoom, but a great experience nonetheless. Yes, sir.
Question.
Yeah.
I have a question. Is the audio on your film going to be as loud as the previous presentation?
Is the audio for the film loud enough for the presentation?
No.
Is it going to be as loud as the last presentation?
Guys before it was way too loud.
You'd have to. They'll take care of it. The men in black will take, or the men in green will take care of it. So, yep. Okay, perfect. So we're going to get started. You're going to see the movie for yourselves and make up your own minds about what happened. Thank you.
All right. Yeah.